Hey everyone, Adrian from 1289. I hope you're all doing well. Today I'm going to talk about the equipment you need to get started in real estate photography. I'll talk about what's essential, what's nice to have, and I'll give you a peek into my camera bag so you can see what I use on real estate shoots. Before I get started, I'd like to thank Sapphire Luxury Homes for allowing me the use of their model for this YouTube video. I do all the marketing, design, and photography for Sapphire, so if you or someone you know is interested in high-end luxury new construction, check them out. This video is for anybody looking to get into real estate photography, but you don't know where to start. There's tons of cameras on the market, tons of lenses, gimbals, drones. It can be really overwhelming. Pricing is all over the place. So I'm going to talk about the considerations you should think about when buying equipment. I'll start off talking about what's absolutely essential, and then I'll get into some nice to haves if your market or your clients are interested and you'd like to invest in these things in the future. Don't feel that you have to break the bank to get into real estate photography. There are some upfront investments, but you don't need to spend thousands of dollars on the latest and greatest equipment because it might not fit your needs. It's going to be more important that you take in the considerations that I present to you and find the most cost-effective way that works with your workflow. And to prove that you don't have to break the bank, recently I filmed a real estate video tour using just an iPhone and a gimbal stabilizer. You can click the link above if you want to check that out. There are going to be 3 pillars of essential equipment that every real estate photographer has to have. And the first and most important of these considerations is what kind of camera do you want to invest in. The key considerations here are, will you be shooting with a crop sensor or a full frame sensor? And will you be shooting video or just photography? If you shoot with a camera with a crop sensor, you're going to find that it's more affordable and you'll get some of the nicer high-end features that these more expensive cameras have. But the image will be a little bit more cropped or zoomed in than the focal length marked on your lens because the sensor is smaller and it will not perform as well in low light. Full frame sensors perform better in low light. You get the full field of view, so a wider image, but they are significantly more expensive. The next consideration you want to think about is video. If you are shooting video, some things to consider are the resolution. Can this thing shoot in HD? Does it shoot in 4K or higher, which is becoming more prominent? And what frame rates does it support? So can you get some nice slow motion for B-roll or further smooth out the footage if you're using a gimbal? And another thing to consider for video is if the camera can shoot in the log profile. This is a very flat color profile that kind of compresses the dynamic range so that when you go and edit it in your favorite software, you can open back up, get some really nice color grading, some really nice cinematic footage, and that's a staple of more expensive cameras. You have a lot of options when it comes to selecting a camera. You've got Canon, Nikon, Sony, Panasonic. Sony is really popular for video. They have great video features. They have great frame rates, so you can get some really nice slow motion. I personally shoot with the Canon 5D Mark IV. I love Canon's color science. I think the colors are very beautiful. It shoots in 4K, albeit it is cropped. That's something to consider. Most cameras that shoot 4K are going to be cropped in even more. And it has the log color profile, so I can get some really nice cinematic footage out of my video editing software. The next equally important pillar of essential equipment for real estate photography is going to be your lens. You absolutely must have a wide angle lens. It's important for those wide field of views to get entire rooms and also in small spaces when you don't have a lot of room to work with to capture as much as you can in the image. But in addition, I also like to have what I call a B-roll lens for video or a detail shot lens for photos. And that's just one that's more cropped in. That's going to allow you to take more creative shots, detailed shots. Find out from your realtor or your builder if they're interested in these shots. If they're not, take them anyway for your portfolio. You never know when an architect or an interior designer might be interested in these shots, and they're a lot of fun to take. If you're shooting with a crop sensor, again, just remember that the sensor is going to be more zoomed in than the marked focal length of the lens you choose. If you are shooting with a cropped sensor, I've had a really good experience with the Tokina 11 to 16 millimeter because it gets you a really nice wide field of view without getting fisheye or distorted, and it's not too expensive at around $600. I do shoot with a full frame camera, the Canon 5D Mark IV as mentioned, so my go-to is the Canon 16 to 35 f2.8. It's a pricey lens, but it's very flexible, great in low light. It gives me the option to kind of zoom in if I want to, and when I don't, I've got a nice wide field of view for wide room shots, and I just use the cheap $125 Nifty 50, the 50 millimeter f1.8 for my detail shots because I can get some really nice bokeh in the background and I can really focus the audience's attention on what I'm trying to show them. Another option of lenses are tilt shift lenses. These are going to really help you get those straight lines, especially verticals. But I find that they're very, very expensive, and unless you're doing high-end architectural photography, it's not worth the investment. You can just carefully position your tripod, and you can correct any minor distortion in Lightroom or Photoshop or whatever tool you use to edit your photos. The third pillar, which is not fully shown here, is your tripod. Over here, I've got a couple of tripod heads. You just want to make sure that you have a sturdy tripod that can comfortably carry the weight of your camera and your lens and whatever else you may have mounted to it. A tripod is essential for level shots, especially if you're in a low light environment where you want to crank the shutter and you don't want to worry about the image becoming blurry. You want it tack sharp. You want to make sure you also have a good sturdy tripod head that, like I said, can comfortably carry the weight of the rig that it's supporting. A ball head is usually a good go-to, and if you have a little bit more budget, you might want to consider a geared head, which is going to allow you to make very precise, minute adjustments. This could be a good compromise for getting your lines straight without investing in a tilt shift lens. As you can see here, I've got both are Manfrotto. I've got the 410 geared head, I've got a magnesium ball head, and I have a carbon fiber Manfrotto tripod. You don't have to get a carbon fiber tripod. They are more expensive, but they carry a lot of weight and they're much lighter. There are great affordable tripod options, aluminum tripods that can carry a lot of weight and are very sturdy and durable. You just want to make sure you don't skimp out on the tripod because it can really affect the stability and the sharpness of your photos. Now that we've talked about the essentials, let's start talking about some nice to haves. And the first one that I'm going to say that's kind of borderline is a drone. Aerial photography has become very popular. Aerial video has become very popular. It can really step up the production value of what you're providing. Just keep in mind that if you're going to be doing any kind of commercial work, anything that's not for recreational use, you do need to get licensed. You need to abide by your local drone laws, so you really should know that so you avoid any unnecessary fines and whatnot. I'm a Part 107 certified drone pilot. I studied for about a week for my exam using a study guide from dronepilotgroundschool.com. Not endorsed by them, but I did have a good experience with them. Their content was pretty accurate to what was on the exam. So if you want to get your pilot license, consider checking them out. Drones have come a long way in size. They're a lot smaller now. They're a lot more affordable, and you can get really, really beautiful footage out of them. So some things to consider, just like the camera, are what resolution is it for still photos? What resolution can it film at video? What kind of frame rates can it shoot? I shoot with the DJI Phantom 4 Pro. Really love this thing. It has log for video. It has great still resolution, great video resolution, great frame rates. Overall, a very well-rounded prosumer drone. There are some cheaper ones that produce just as good quality. And there's the Mavic 2 Pro, which is very popular. I believe it has a similar specs, but in a smaller, more portable package. So just the key things to consider here is the resolution of the video, of the photo, and if you're going to be using this commercially, which presumably you are as a real estate photographer, make sure you know your local laws and you get licensed. The next thing to consider that's a nice to have is whether you're going to use off-camera lighting. Now this is going to depend on the market, on what realtors are interested in, on your shooting style. There's a number of ways to shoot real estate photography. You can do some nice stuff with natural light, but you're at the mercy of the elements. You can do HDR, which kind of attempts to find that balance between the windows and the highlights and the shadows. And then you can use external flash. I've got two of them over here. This is more work. It looks really great when you want to get everything on the outside really nice and saturated and very clear, as well as everything lit on the inside. You would just expose for the outside and you would artificially light the house. There's a couple ways to get into it. You can have either a single flash, where you kind of go room by room, your camera's on the tripod, and as you move you take a picture and you blend them all together in Photoshop. You can have multiple flashes, so you can put one of these things in each room, have a wireless trigger, and kind of take all those exposures at once and just do your editing. And then you can have kind of like a large bounce flash that you can bounce off the ceiling or off of the walls just to kind of get a nice soft light on the whole interior while you're exposed for the outside. I really like this style of work. Most of the time this is overkill in my particular market. HDR seems to be very popular, but this is popular amongst builders and architects and interior designers that kind of want that higher end magazine quality look. I shoot with Godox because I found their lighting products to be very affordable. I have the V860 II for Canon. The main reason I like this is that it has one big rechargeable battery rather than like 4 AA's, which just means that if you have a few of these, you've got a charger and a ton of batteries all over the place. I found it to be pretty powerful for the price, And then for my kind of big bounce flash, I use the 8600BM. It's got a massive battery, so I can just walk around one of these, shooting it off the ceiling, bouncing it off walls, and I get some really nice soft light inside, as well as that beautiful saturated, everything clear in view outside. Check to see if this is popular or necessary or part of your shooting style in your market. It is a little bit more of an investment, it is a little bit more work, but I think you can really step up the quality of your photos. The next nice to have is a gimbal stabilizer. The only reason I have not deemed this essential is because it's only relevant to video. If you shoot video, this is essential. And basically what this is it balances your camera using weights and counterweights, so you get a very smooth, stable cinematic footage. I've got two types of stabilizers here. A glide cam, which is purely mechanical, it just uses weight and physics. And then the electronic stabilizer, which are very powerful. This is the Ronin S, which I shoot with. The biggest consideration here is how heavy your setup is. You want to get one that can comfortably carry your setup without being on the border, so that it's not jittery and the motors aren't working too hard, but you also don't want one that's too big because they're heavy and fatigue sets in very quick. I've got a great experience with the Ronin S. It carries my 5D Mark IV very comfortably. There is a Ronin SC designed for mirrorless cameras that's a little bit lighter, and the camera being lighter, so it's not as hard for you to walk around with and hard on your muscles. Overall, it has great build quality, it has a great battery, it lasts a long day, I can shoot all day with it. It really gives me stability and the opportunity to take some nice creative shots. These can get more expensive, so I'm showing the glide cam here, which is not electronic at all. These do have a steep learning curve, but if you get really good at it, you can get some nice stable shots. The key reason I like this over this is that this will always keep the horizon straight. It's using software and sensors, so it's a little bit more forgiving, but this, you can just gun and run with it. It can get to a really small package. You don't have to worry about batteries. You don't have to worry about the elements. You also don't have to worry about getting a used one because these things can be used and abused. So these are two options that are essential if you're doing video. You can get really nice punch-ins, zoom outs, slide overs. But if you're just doing photography, this is not really relevant to you. The key takeaway here when selecting a gimbal is just to make sure that it can comfortably carry your setup. Consider everything from your lens hood, your lens, your camera body, a hard drive, or anything else that's mounted to it when deciding how heavy your rig is, because you don't want to get one that can struggle to carry your camera, because that'll result in overworked motors and more jittery footage. Another nice to have that I use a lot is a linear slider. Now this is also specific to video, and it's not even necessary at that because you can achieve some of these same slides and pans using your gimbal. The main reason I like it is I just find it a little bit more reliable than a gimbal for linear slides. I don't have to worry about me moving up and down as I'm walking and that axis of movement. And also if you're really zoomed in for a nice detail shot, these tend to work a little bit better. This is a very basic Manfrotto one. It's a 60 centimeter linear slider. I don't even think they make it anymore. It's very basic. It just has a stop and a friction adjustment, so I can just kind of pan across while this is mounted to my tripod. There are motorized versions of these, and unless you're doing interview style or more commercial style videos, like whether it's a profile of the company or the realtor, I don't think they're necessary. They're very expensive, they're a bit more cumbersome, more setup time. You can achieve a lot of the same looks in the house with just this, but again, it's not necessary, it's just nice to have. It just makes my workflow more efficient, something to consider. Again, I believe this particular Manfrotto one is discontinued. I don't think this is the best. I just honestly picked up a great deal on it at the time before they discontinued it. There's a lot of great reliable options on Amazon, BH Photo, Adorama, wherever you get your photo equipment from. And a lot of them even have the option to add accessories like a weighted flywheel that'll just kind of further dampen and smooth out the footage that you might introduce when shaking it with your hand and whatnot. But all in all, not necessary, but it can kind of step up the production value of your content with really smooth cinematic pans. I'm going to put links below to all the equipment you've seen from my camera bag, as well as some alternatives that are a bit more budget friendly if you're just starting out. But I hope this video helped kind of clarify some of the considerations you should think about if you want to just get into real estate photography and what equipment you should choose. I'm going to make a follow-up video next week that's going to focus on shooting styles and techniques and considerations on the day of the shoot to ensure that the real estate content you're putting out is top-notch. Until next time, stay creative and stay blessed.